The Consolations of Philosophy, written by Alain de Botton. That's the book we are discussing this week, and we are trying to find out how philosophy can console us when we are experiencing certain troubles. That's the idea behind this book. And so far, we discussed different philosophers like Socrates, Epicurus, Seneca, and we saw how their philosophies or their ideas could console us in our difficult moments. And continuing the same, today I'm going to discuss the chapter on Michel de Montaigne, the French philosopher known for his essays. In fact, he was the one who pretty much invented this writing form, the essays, that is. And the consolation that I'm going to discuss today, where his works can console us, is about inadequacy. And we all have felt inadequate at times in different ways. We just feel somehow we are not good enough. And that's where Michel de Montaigne's writings can help us. So, one by one, I will try to discuss different inadequacies we feel and how Montaigne's ideas can help us, can heal us. So let's start with the first inadequacy. It's about our own bodies, how they are, the way they age, the way they appear, and we feel inadequate about them. Especially talking about sexual inadequacy, that's a lot more common. In our societies, generally, if you look around, we just try to hide a lot of things and we try to appear graceful in terms of our appearances or language that we use. So, what that does is, when it comes to certain not so graceful activities or things inside us, we feel a kind of guilt in us that probably something is wrong with us, we are not good enough. But Montaigne reminds us that it's natural. And most of these problems that we find in our mind are because in our social circles we don't honestly discuss all these problems, all the things that the insecurities or fears that are going on in our heads. But we must remind ourselves of certain simple realities he tells us. For example, one of the lines that I find particularly interesting is, it says, "Upon the highest throne in the world we are seated, still upon our asses." And then there's another one, "Kings and philosophers shit, and so do ladies." These wonderfully written sentences, so simple but so powerful, they remind us that no matter how graceful we pretend to be in our appearances, we all follow certain bodily functions. That's also reality. We don't have to hide ourselves from that reality. It's a part of us. And he says the following words. He says, "The genital activities of mankind are so natural, so necessary, and so right. What have they done to make us never dare to mention them without embarrassment and to exclude them from serious, orderly conversation? We are not afraid to utter the words kill, thieve, or betray, but those others we only dare to mutter through our teeth." And that's a good point, right? We don't. We talk about killings. We talk about all those things, but somehow hesitate to talk about these simple bodily functions. And what that eventually does is, it gives rise to a feeling of insecurity, feeling of inadequacy, because we are not publicly discussing what is going on with our bodies, the way we are feeling about them. And if we did that, we'll find out everybody experiences this emotion. Everybody has that fear. And on top of that, Maybe the world is not out there to judge us. People might understand. They'll be compassionate towards us. Not everybody is going to be mean. So, bringing out these difficult conversations, these awkward things which we call, that might help. And to make matters slightly easier for us, Montaigne told his readers that he was not going to hold back when it came to talking about these difficult issues. So, these are the following points that he said, and you'll see how he expressed himself, the difficult parts of his identity, and how that's important. I think that's very important as a writer also. So he said that the behavior of his penis constituted an essential part of his identity. So to quote him, he says, "Every one of my members, each as much as another, makes me myself. And none makes me more properly a man than that one. I owe to the public my portrait complete." That's interesting. And then he also confessed that he found sex noisy and messy. He said, "Everywhere else you can preserve some decency, all other activities except the rules of propriety. This other one can only be thought of as flawed or ridiculous. Just try and find a wise and discreet way of doing it." Then he also said that he liked being quiet when sitting on the toilet. So he said, "Of all the natural operations, that is the one during which I least willingly tolerate being disrupted." He also said that he was very regular about going to toilet, that is. He said, "My bowels and I never fail to keep our rendezvous, which is when I jump out of bed." So he visited there frequently. So by discussing all these things, Montaigne tried to remind us that the body that we have, we don't need to deny it, nor do we need to overcome it. But sometimes it's just so important, at the very least, just remind ourselves that we can accept it. We can accept the natural tendencies of the bodies. And that goes a long way. Then there is this cultural inadequacy. We feel that sometimes, right? Especially in today's world, we come across so many cultures. We live in this pretty much multicultural world where we look at other cultures and wonder what are they doing. So what really happens is the today's world, you could say it's divided between the West and probably the rest, or you can say use the terms like global South, global North. All these kind of terms you can use. You can use race. For example, there are white people, there are brown or black people. But in all these cases, you will find that what we have done in today's world is we have divided it into two camps. One camp is considered normal and the other somehow abnormal. So certain activities have somehow become normal in our culture. For example, in most cultures around the world today, monogamy is the norm, and polygamy is pretty much abnormal. And so, if you come from a background, a cultural background, where you are being considered abnormal, that you might feel inadequate, you might feel insecure about your identity. So, once again, Montaigne's works, his ideas can help us overcome this inadequacy, or at least find some consolation in it. So, Montaigne took up traveling, and he traveled in different parts, different countries of Europe. And then he found a lot of different things. But first of all, he noticed that people generally are very prone to be upset by the cultural differences. He says, once out of their villages, they feel like fish out of water. Wherever they go, they cling to their ways and curse foreign ones. If they come across a fellow countryman, they celebrate the event. With a morose and taciturn prudence, they travel about wrapped up in their cloaks and protecting themselves from the contagion of an unknown clime. And that's what really happened, and in some ways it annoyed Montaigne also. He saw that when people traveled in different countries, almost everyone felt that the foreign cultures were doing something wrong. Something was not right there. And they judged the other culture. And somehow they felt their own culture was superior and the other culture is in some ways inferior. Because we get used to certain things and we consider them normal. And when we consider them normal, generally we also consider them good, and something that is abnormal or different from our experience, that seems like abnormal or bad. But if you think about it, it shouldn't be bad, it's just different. There's a very interesting passage where he talks about how in different countries the different ideas prevail, and just observe these differences. He writes, in Peru, big ears are beautiful. They stretch them as far as they can. Artificially, that is. A man still alive today says that he saw in the East a country where there is this custom of stretching ears and loading them with jewels is held in such esteem that he was often able to thrust his arm, clothes, and all through the holes women pierced in their lobes. Elsewhere, there are whole nations which carefully blacken their teeth and loathe seeing white ones. Elsewhere, they dye them red. The women of Mexico count low foreheads as a sign of beauty. So while they pluck the hair from the rest of their body, there they encourage it to grow thick and propagate it artificially. They hold large breasts in such high esteem that they affect giving suck to their children over their shoulders. So you can understand these cultural shocks. It's also very interesting to notice how different cultures hold certain things in esteem, and it just varies depending on where you are. And so many things, of these value judgments, they are so much dependent on the culture we are coming from. It's very hard to identify, objectively define which kind of behavior is normal, which one is abnormal, because it's just different. Just like the food. In some places people eat fish, in some people they don't touch it at all. That's again a cultural thing. And amidst all this cultural difference, Montaigne reminds us who we are. And he says, I am a man, nothing human is foreign to me. And that's the kind of acceptance that we should look for. So that's about feeling inadequacy in terms of the culture we are coming from. Then the final one is intellectual inadequacy. You might feel insecure about our intellect, about us not being intelligent. And if you think about it, the definition of intellect, intelligence has evolved so much. It has changed in the generation of internet. For example, pre-internet era, there was so much about noise around remembering facts, remembering a lot of things about other countries, other cultures, your own country. And that used to be considered very intellectual thing to do. Now it has changed. Just remembering facts, which you can simply find on Google, is not really considered very intellectual, although it might be considered somewhat in certain circles. But it has changed. And similarly, Montaigne tells us that once again it depends which culture, which society are we talking about. There they will have different preferences for certain things. For example, you might go to a school and you're supposed to calculate the area of a triangle. And if you're not able to do that, you're not good enough. Sometimes you're asked to translate a passage from one language to another. Sometimes you're supposed to interpret and write about poetry, and so on and so on. And then, because education works in certain ways, it teaches us certain things. Out of so many millions of things out there in the world, it teaches us certain things. Societies tell us certain things. And somehow, if we are not good enough in some of those things, then we might feel inadequate. But Montaigne was not really impressed with this kind of intellect, especially when it wasn't really helpful for your life, just the theoretical kind of knowledge. So he said that what good did their great erudition do for Varro or Aristotle? Did it free them from human ills? Did it relieve them from misfortunes such as befall a common porter? Could logic console them for the gout? In other words, Montaigne felt he talked about very simple things like we are suffering, uh, we are experiencing bad gut, maybe stomach issues, maybe we are ill, maybe we have stress. But he's saying if all your logic cannot help you there in these simplest of things and you're still struggling, what's even the point? And that sounds very much like Buddhism, where the focus is all on suffering and removing that suffering, your individual suffering, emotional, physical, psychological. That was his idea. And he wanted us to become wise. He says, we readily inquire, does he know Greek or Latin? Can he write poetry or prose? But what matters most is what we put last. Has he become better or wiser? We ought to find out not who understands most, but who understands best. We work merely to fill the memory, leaving the understanding and the sense of right and wrong empty. So essentially, Montaigne reminds us that instead of focusing so much on complicated ideas, let's come back to basics. Let's come back to ourselves. What are the things around us that we can focus on, that we can understand in depth, probably analyze them the best? And when we do that, that's what truly makes us wise. It doesn't really make us wise if we're going on to study a lot of theoretical sciences or other studies. But just having that sense of wisdom. And he talks a lot about how people who are interested in academics, how they just ignore the simplicity or the reality of this world and just focus on so many abstract ideas, focus so much on the language and how accurate it is, how fancy it is. But that's not really important. What is important, especially when it comes to philosophy, is does it affect our lives? Does it make life better in any way? Does it truly touch us? And when we do that, when we are grounded that way, Montaigne reminds us that we will not feel inadequate. Will not really feel that we are not good enough. We will feel that we are good enough. Once we are grounded in reality, We are focusing on the problems at hand. And that's what we should aspire to do. So that's about the today's discussion. Tomorrow we'll continue discussing other consolations from the book, and I hope you'll enjoy it once again. So thank you once again for tuning in, and I'll catch you the next time. Thank you.